Welcome back, coders, to another video. Here we're taking a look at a specific version of one of my favorite games of the past year. That is Warframe. And I say the past year, that's because that is when I originally found it. So don't you worry, I know it's a 5-year-old game. But I wanted to take a look at the Switch version because obviously there have been they finally released that version, and it's really, really exciting. I can tell you firsthand that the Switch version holds up incredibly well, even with this guy walking right through me. One of the reasons that doing this in one take is a risk. But as you can see, we're ahead in the game and playing it and taking a look at how it performs, how it plays, what some of the drawbacks, what some of the advantages are, and everything like that. So far, gotta say, not a whole lot of drawbacks. I'm gonna go ahead and hop around here. You can see a little bit about how steady that frame rate is. This is in Maru's Bazaar. I won't tell you when you find this place, but it's a cool little trading outpost that is great for not just beginners, but advanced players too, to meet people who really want to pass along some of the great stuff that they've collected over the time. Plus there's some cool statues. But really the point of this video is to help you guys who are newbies out with just coming up with a good setup for how to play the game. Not really going to dive in too much into tips and tricks on what to do because there's so much to learn, and really the best tip that I can give you there is take it in stride. Make sure that you don't dive in too head first. Don't go crying for the end game. The end game is multifaceted, multi-layered, and incredibly awesome. And I'm not even close. And I've already put in 200 hours on PC. So what this video is mostly about is a cool thing that I noticed on the Switch version, which is the options menu. Options has always been very full featured on Warframe, especially on the PC version. But what I was surprised to see is that there was not only control options that are really advanced, and we'll dive into those in just a second, but there's also graphics options. So we're going to start there because there's a couple tips that I think actually make the game a lot more playable on Switch. There's some things that I think are drawbacks that hold it back from being perfect, especially if you're coming from a PC environment or a PS4 environment where you're going to get 1080p and 60 FPS and things like that. It's hard to obviously adjust to that lower resolution and some of that lower frame rate. That being said, once you do, it's no big deal. But here's some things and some tips in this display section in your menu that you can do to make this a lot more fun. The first and probably most important, and this is going to vary based upon your TV, so just go ahead and make sure that you're adjusting accordingly, but make sure that brightness is a little bit higher. It seems to crush blacks a little bit. Brightness is just going to balance that out. 69 is a fun little joke. Hope you enjoyed that, all you dirty mofos out there. As for the probably second most important thing to do here, field of view. Crank that shit all the way up. Put that at the top. 78 is the highest it can go. Ironically, that's the highest it can go on every platform, including PC. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But 78 is the highest you can go. It's going to change your life in the plains. It's going to change your life in some of these levels, especially the more open ones. It just gives you so much more viewing space. And with Warframe, I think it's more important to be able to see more than to necessarily get more precision, just because of the fact that it is such a fast-paced game, and so many of your guns are going to be about getting as much information in your eyes as possible so you can react to it. I think that's an important thing. So field of view at 78 is a big one. The second one, if you're going to be playing with something we're going to talk about in a little bit, motion controls, I recommend you turn off screen shake. Also, if you're going to turn off motion blur, which I do recommend, and I'll talk about that in a minute, then disabling screen shake is going to make that slightly more juddery look a little bit less unnerving, and maybe prevent some motion sickness that it might cause. I just want to recommend that just because it's always been a problem for me, is like certain games give me a little bit more of a cause for motion sickness than others. I haven't really had it in a long time, but that's a good way to avoid it. Enabling screen shake is just going to kind of give you that normally like head bob and stuff like that, like normal kind of stuff. I just don't think it improves the game enough for you to worry about it. Adaptive exposure, leave on. Glare, leave on. Ambient occlusion. You can turn it off if you really hate the shadowy parts, but honestly, it looks fine. GPU particles, I bumped that up to high because from what I can tell, it doesn't seem to totally crunch the game if you have a lot of GPU particles going on, but obviously you're going to go ahead and adjust that according to your gameplay session. So, but the cool thing about that is obviously you get the best of the best look for all those particly cool Warframe abilities, which if you're new to the game are just one of the best parts of the game. Those abilities are game changing. They're completely unique to each Warframe, and all kinds of fun looking stuff happens, especially with some of the newer ones that they're pumping out. Now, this next one I think is one of the most important ones to consider. Depth of field is both good and bad. I would go ahead and say it adds a lot to the game with certain moves. And I'll go ahead and show you a little bit about, like, I don't know if I can. Actually, I can't in here. It's not going to be something I can show you in here, but I'll show you on another stream or something like that. Essentially, like when you're bullet jumping, it puts you in a depth of field, your character in depth of field, and it looks really cool. That being said, it is not integral to the gameplay. So if you're feeling like it's slowing things down, that is one area where you can cut that is pretty easy, and it's not going to do a humongous difference, but I did notice some stability. That's all I'll say. So I go ahead and keep that off for most part, unless I'm like really feeling graphics hoary on the day. So keep that in mind. Motion blur is my least favorite effect in this game. I'll go ahead and show you why. In this version of the game, in this specific game, and this version, because it's 30 FPS, because the resolution's so low, what it ends up doing more than anything, and while yes, it's going to look super smooth at first, is you lose all this visual information in the middle when you're moving. And since this game is all about movement, what ends up happening is that the whole game ends up being blurry all the time, and it drives me absolutely bonkers. This is not the low resolution happening, because the game can look significantly better than this. But if you just keep whipping it around, which I will be honest, your camera is going to whip around. Now, this might not be as big of a problem if you're using just like control sticks, but I think the biggest sin here isn't the fact that they included it, it's that they didn't allow you to control any sort of slider on how intense it is. Because right now the intensity is way too high, and personally, I think it takes way too much away from the game for it to just feel a little bit smoother. Again, this might be something that you'll have to enable if you're getting motion sickness from going ahead and taking it off, just because it can feel jittery, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about there. You kind of saw it a little bit before, but ultimately, I just think you lose way too much information for it to be worth it. And like I said, this is the difference. You can see like everything I move now is all in crisp 720p, beautiful picture. And like I said, I just think it allows you to get those headshots and those high detail moves a lot easier. And I think it's worth it. Now, obviously, you can see that it's a little less smooth, but the game runs very consistently at 30 frames per second for the most part. I think very, very rare instances you'll see it go ahead and dive a little bit, but not in any consistent matter. So I would recommend keeping that off just for those new players who are trying to get those headshots on. So more experienced players might just have that muscle memory and it won't be a problem. But for me, I just wanted to keep that off. Bloom, definitely keep it on. It looks good. You can turn it off. I just don't understand why you would. That has a very big effect on what the style of the game looks like, and this game is bloom heavy, but it's just something that the game really likes. That being said, you can turn down the intensity, and as you can see, I turned it down to 34. I feel like that's a healthy balance of having it without it being too overbearing, and for some reason the Switch version's bloom is a little bit more intense than the other version, so this kind of brings it down to a match for the other ones. Color correction, keep it on. Constant weapon trail, that's always default to off. Leave it off. There's no reason for it. It just gives you a constant energy trail behind your weapon. I just don't understand it. Anyway, weapon elemental effects, please put this on. I'm pretty sure it came default off. Put it on. It just looks so good. Because if you've got like that free sword that is going around right now, which I'm pretty sure is a code you can put in online on your Warframe account, that's going to give you a free heat sword, and that thing looks dope with its elemental effects on. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend that you do that as well. All of this stuff is pretty standard. I wouldn't mess with chat, interface, or gameplay too much. Obviously, you can change your invites and all that stuff. But the one thing that I'm going to recommend, and this is just a personal thing that I think is absolutely a game changer on Warframe specifically, it's making me want to play this version more than my PC version, just temporarily. It's motion controls. And this is something that I guess even the devs at Warframe didn't know that Panic Button was able to sneak in, but they were. And I gotta say, I'm so happy they made it into the launch. A lot of times what's been happening is Switch games will get it, but it'll be months after the game launched, and then the player base is gone, and there's not enough people playing it. So this is a really cool thing, big win, and it sets it apart from the other versions of Warframe in a way that makes it more closely match the PC version in terms of control responsiveness and ability to get those precision shots and stuff like that I feel like it wasn't there. And you've been seeing me kind of play around with it. I just like the ability to go like that and flick it and lock into somebody, and it's just nice to be able to get those like nice little adjustments too. Now I am a person that plays with high sensitivity motion controls, and I do it with split Joy-Cons. I feel like this replicates way closer what the mouse and keyboard setup is, and it just makes a lot of sense for me. I recommend you try it there. One thing that you'll notice, though, is with the split Joy-Cons, it's just going to feel more jittery than on the Pro Controller. So if you have a Pro Controller, that might even it out to get you used to it, and I recommend bumping it up once you get a lot more comfortable. As you can see, I 100% max out my adjust motion controls. I turn that on, and I don't change anything else. Everything else is exactly set as the default. I didn't change anything else, so I recommend you keeping it there. I haven't played around with the Archwing yet, so I'll have to report back if there's any questions. Just go ahead and leave a comment if you want to find out more about Archwing related stuff. But otherwise, this is pretty much my current setup for Warframe, so I hope that was helpful. Stay tuned to GameCode for more coverage of Warframe on Nintendo Switch and PC, but specifically just some diving into more thoughts, in-depth opinions, and to give you a real good idea as to what some cool tricks are. Also, we'll probably be doing a live stream in the coming days with the community to get you guys all started and off on running on your new Warframes, because there's like 40 of them to collect. I'm gonna have to double check on that number, but there's so much to do in this game, and I gotta say, it's the best $0 investment you'll ever make if you're into video games. So thank you again, and as always, stay classy, coders.